Now on, our troubles will be miles away. Here we are as in olden days, happy golden days of your faithful friends who are dear to us, gather near to us once more. Through the years, we'll all be together. Aga?
I love it.
I'm like,
Well done.
Frank Sinatra and Christmas music are like music to my ears.
Yeah, we're definitely in Christmassy mood now.
So
Amazing.
good. I love it.
Yeah,
Well,
so good.
welcome to the Greatness Machine.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. And boy, do we have a special guest today, my friend Aga Bajer. Welcome to the show. Woo!
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to see something cool? My hat is excited to see you. Check this out. Wait.
Oh, wow. Oh my God, I'm so impressed. So impressed.
my mom sends my kids all these crazy Christmas things that dance and sing. I have like 20 of them, and this is what we got this year. So I thought I'd sing twice for you.
Awesome.
Do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool, guys, welcome to the Great Machine. As I mentioned, I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and we have an amazing show for you. And for those of you guys that love our show, you know that we stand for two things: people that are living their passions and those that are creating greatness in the world. And today is a special, we are festive. Aga has her red sweater on. I have my red hat that will probably come on and off throughout the show. But we are going to be, this is a special holiday season episode. We will be diving into some cool stuff, all about what Aga's up to. And guys, with that said, start a watch party. Ask us questions. I got my team on standby. They will be shooting questions our way. And hey, if you like something we hear, hit the like button. But this is interactive, and I'm so excited for us to have a great show. So with that said, I do want to give a little bit of a bio for my friend Aga. So Aga and I, this is how we met. I put my book out in September, and she like grabbed it and was like really supportive of the book right away. And then asked me to be on her awesome podcast called CultureLab. And we had this amazing time together. And I was like, I really like this person. Anyone that supports me like that, I like them. But no, it was really cool, and we vibed, and it was just such a good show. And I just saw that we had so much in common. So I was like, man, I want you on my show. And so here we are. And
Here we are.
yeah. And so if you don't mind, I want to like talk a little bit about your background. I have your formal bio. I always kind of give my own bio, and then I give the formal one. So
Yeah.
So first of all, I was like, Aga's got such a cool name. It's Aga Bajer, right?
Yeah.
Right? And she's the author of Building and Sustaining. She's an author of Building and Sustaining a Coaching Culture, and creator of and host of the CultureLab Podcast. She's currently working on her second book, The CultureLab. You grew up in communist Poland, and you lived in 12 cities in 5 different countries. Currently, you live in Milan, Italy, with your husband and 4-legged friend. And you are the founder and CEO of the boutique consultancy Aga Bajer Associates, and her team. They work with startups and scale-ups around the globe, helping them create a thriving culture at scale. And we're going to be talking all about that. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Very excited.
That was like a mouthful. Wow. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, all things considering, I'm doing great. You know, as you said, I'm based in Milan, in Italy, and I don't know if you remember, it's been such a long time ago, but at the end of February, Italy and Milan specifically was the first place where we had this outbreak of COVID-19 outside of China. So for us, it feels like it's been forever, this madness, and also a crazy kind of normality. But we've been in the red zone for almost a year now. So, you know, considering that everyone's healthy and the business is doing well. So, Yeah, all good. Thanks.
Yeah, my wife's very good friend from college. She lives in Milan, so we were getting the play-by-play, back in February and March, and people like not being able to leave their homes. And it's interesting to see, culturally the different way people respond to this. Because here in the States, you have like some people that are a lot like that, where it's level 5 lockdown, and then you have the other group that's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
and you're like, huh? This is a hoax. You're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we don't have a lot of that going on in Italy, although especially I feel at the very beginning of this, there were parts of Italy that were not affected at all, like Sicily, and generally down the south, they had 0 cases. So people were a little bit annoyed that basically, everything was locked down. They couldn't work. Things were really difficult, and they couldn't understand why. And I think with the second lockdown, everyone is just, has resigned to it and understood also how serious things are. So yeah, it's slightly different than the US.
Yeah. It's we'll see how it turns out. Hopefully that we're at the end of the last stretch of this, right? With the vaccine coming out and
exactly.
And, yeah. So so with that said, let's talk about more pleasant things. So you've had an eventful year. I'd love to talk, and like I mentioned before the show, I love origin stories. I love talking about, how people got into what they're into. And look, the show's The Greatness Machine. It's about people that are living their passions. And I know you're really passionate around values and culture and really companies and people, leaders leveling up. And on your show, you talk with a lot of leaders that really are trying to, make a difference but struggle in the way that they're doing it in the way of getting there, right? Because I think that change is hard and doing big things is hard. And if it wasn't, everybody would do it. That's what I always say. But how did you, here you are, you're in Italy, you have this thriving business, you're an author, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff that you're really up to right now. But how did you even get into all of this?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it took me a while even to connect the dots, because I was thinking, why am I so passionate about this? What happened in my life that made me feel like this is the most important work that you can do? And I think it all goes back to how I grew up, and it all goes back to my father. So as you've mentioned, I grew up in communist Poland, and my dad, it's a funny story because he was an athlete, and actually he had a brown belt in jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
And so brown belt, for the folks who don't know, what the grades are, is 1 level below black belt, which is like the master level. And so he was pretty good at it. And when the time came for him to find a job, he struggled a little bit because, as you can imagine, being a master in jiu-jitsu doesn't really help you to earn money. And eventually he did find a job. It was in the sports club for policemen back then in Poland. And a lot of folks had a second job. My parents were building a house, so he started looking for a second job. And in our small town, there was absolutely nothing around jiu-jitsu that he could do. But he did go to a club, and they told him, listen, you could be a basketball coach if you want. And so he became a basketball coach, and now he's completely obsessed still until this day, 80 years old. He built an incredible team in the small town. So imagine a town of 75,000 people.
Wow.
And they won national championships 5 times in a row back then. And so when I grew up with my dad, I saw him sketching things all the time. And I was like, Dad, what is it? He was really crap at drawing, I thought. And so I was thinking, why does he insist on sketching stuff? He's not getting any better. And he explained to me that he is sketching game plans. I was like, okay, so what is a game plan? And he says, well, a game plan helps you win a game. I was like, okay, still didn't make much sense to me. And then he pulled out like a big notebook from his bag. And he said, okay, so a game plan can help you win a game, but this helps you win a championship. And I remember because actually that was the year when they won the first championship and it was a big deal. So I was really curious, like what can help you win a championship? And basically this notebook was where he would clip all the game plans. But the first pages, he said, were the most important pages for him. And he called the whole thing his playbook, but basically the first pages were like his philosophy as a coach and some of the principles that he had in his mind for his players. Right. And over the years, I think he iterated a little bit. And we recently had a conversation and I asked him, have you made any changes? What is it? Is it still what it used to be? And I remembered vaguely, and he reminded me that the principles, which are basically, we would talk about values probably if we saw them today. Right. So he said, play for the game. Practice for the game, play for the team, win for the fans. So he had those three things. And of course, there were many layers to that. So basically, when he said practice for the game, what he meant was you don't play to win. This is not the point, right? You play to have fun, but also you play to get better. And it doesn't really matter. Do you feel like it or do you not feel like it? You just go and practice every single day. And it's true, I was on his team and it was raining, snowing, whatever, windy. I felt like it. I didn't feel like it. I was sick. I was feeling great. I had to go to training. So that was his first principle, just trust the process. You will get better. And he would push us and he would tell us, it's okay. You don't need to be the best player in the team. But what I want for you and from you is to become better than you were yesterday. And, tomorrow I want you to be better than you are today. So that was something that really fascinated me. And I thought, this is interesting because it obviously worked out for my dad. He, as I shared, they won national championship for 5 times in a row. That was, I think, back then, never happened before, especially in such a small town. And then what happened was I basically got a few jobs. Then I met a guy. I moved to Greece, and I decided that it would be a good time to set up my own business. I was super passionate about that. And, the whole scenario, when you think about this, like a young girl and she leaves the country, she marries a guy whom she has just met basically and decides to get married and set up a business all at the same time. So most parents probably would feel freaked out, but my parents were pretty cool, I have to say. But once I remember my dad visited us and he started a conversation. He said, listen, I'm just watching you and it's so nice to see that you're so passionate about starting this business. But have you ever thought of taking a step back and thinking what you are really doing with this business and with your life, and maybe thinking, what impact do you want to have and what principles you want to guide you? I was like, oh, come on, Dad is putting his coach hat on and he's going to preach. And he did. And back then, I really didn't listen to him and I just did my thing. And it was a terrible disaster from the business point of view. And when it all went down, after a year, I ran out of my runway and I basically went bankrupt. And I got really depressed and I started thinking, what went wrong? And I realized that my father was right, that first of all, you need to know who you are doing it for, right? And what impact do you want to have? And what do these people need from you? And second of all, you need some of these principles. You need to know how you want to do business, what's going to make you unique, what's authentically you, et cetera, et cetera. I did none of those things back then. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do things differently from now on. And also I want to learn how you can set up a business for success. And so I joined consultancies like Korn Ferry and PwC, and I really tried to figure out what works and what doesn't work and what sets businesses up for success and what makes them go out of business. So, many years later, here I am, still doing the same thing. So focusing on how we can help companies to have a culture and strategy that basically becomes rocket fuel for growth.
Wow. I apologize. I had literally a gardener with an air, like blowing a blower outside my window, and I was like trying to text while my wife like, tell them to turn that off now. So I
know because we have leaves here as well.
What's that?
Leaf blowers are the loudest thing ever, right? They can. Yeah.
Yeah. That was such a challenge of multitasking right now. So I was listening, but did you mention what type of business the first business was that you started?
So I had this idea that I would be the person who would completely revolutionize the food industry in Greece back then. It was many, many years ago by basically importing stuff from Eastern European countries, which wasn't such a well thought idea probably, but it did have some potential. But the way I went about it was all wrong, and I didn't understand the market. I didn't understand what people needed. So that's probably one of the reasons that it didn't work out.
Well, congratulations that you failed in business. That's a big win. I mean, do you want to hear my first big failure in business?
Totally.
When I was in college, I started a nightclub, like a electronic music nightclub business, and I would get all these people to come, and we'd bring in DJs, and we would have these big parties, and I would just be working the whole time. But I would get like a few hundred people, and then it turned into a couple thousand people. And so then I moved to LA, Hollywood, and every Saturday night they had this huge. This is like, and there might have been mega nightclubs in Europe then, but in the United States there really wasn't. Maybe in New York. So LA and New York started these mega nightclubs, and they're on Saturday nights in Hollywood. And I said, I'm going to do a Friday night one, and and so I spent like $100,000, and I probably never worked so hard in my life. And I rented out this place called the Hollywood Athletic Club. It probably fit like 5,000 people. And I flew in this DJ. He's a famous DJ who just recently passed away. I think he committed suicide actually, his name's Eric Murillo. And I had to build a stage for him and flew him in from New York. And I had all these DJs from all around LA. And I brought in like a celebrity, get an MC, and I show, and the reason you made me think of this, I've never told this story before. It was called Vapor, was the name of the party, and we show up. My other party, another party called Got DJs that was very successful, and we would get 1,000 people to show up, and we weren't making money, but it was at least pretty popular. And I had my grand opening, and there were 75 people that showed up. It was so painful. So and this guy was like, Eric Murillo was like total prima donna. Is like, I'll only stay at the Chateau Marmont in Hollywood, and I won't stay at the Ritz-Carlton. And so like, this is the type of guy, like, you have a limo pick him up, and I like literally just lost like $100,000 that night. And so, and it wasn't like I was at zero and I went down negative 100,000. And so I had to pick. So he's like, how am I going to get to the airport? So I had to drive from my house, which was an hour away, to pick him up at the Chateau Marmont, because he refused to stay at the Ritz-Carlton, and drive him and his girlfriend, or his girl he was dating, to the airport in my mom's old Mercedes. And it was just like massive failure.
Crazy. Yeah.
But the reason I thought about that was that I was so entrepreneurial that I thought it was a good idea, but I hadn't done the work to figure out how I was going to make it successful.
So same here, absolutely same here. I mean, I was so committed, and back then I actually lived by the sea in a little village called Perea near Thessaloniki in Greece. It was beautiful, and we almost lived on the beach. And I would work like 16-hour, 18-hour days, crazy. And everyone was telling me, what are you doing? This is mad. But I was so focused and so motivated. But yeah, just like you, didn't really think it out so well. So
it's funny. It's funny like that you just said that, and you made me think of something else, which is, I always tell people now, and now I'm I'm now built many much larger companies that on paper, if they're like really big, successful companies, right?
Yeah.
And so now I always tell people when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I say, God doesn't care if you're successful as an entrepreneur. Not the only person that cares is your mother, and she only cares because you're sad if you're not. Like nobody cares.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah.
Wow, this is so great. And I think it kind of reminds me what my father was trying to tell me as well, right? Because he was all about, think about the important stuff. Don't think about, I want this to work out. I want to succeed. I want to make that much money, whatever. Just think, what are you really creating here?
Wow.
And totally right. Yeah, when you fail, I mean, in my case, I felt a lot of shame about this. I don't know about you. Did you feel like,
Yeah, I locked myself in my bedroom and read business books for 4 months, and then I quit.
That's a nice coping strategy. I like that.
Well, I got fired from my job at the same time. This is my first job out of college.
No.
I got fired from my job, and my business blew up all within the same couple weeks. And so I just locked myself in my bedroom, and then I moved to San Francisco a couple months later. So I just made a life change. But yeah, I was embarrassed, and I was angry and embarrassed, and everything. Like that's all. I've lost a few businesses in my life, and then it's very painful when you lose a business.
It is painful. Yeah, totally.
But you grow,
You grow. Exactly. That's the point. I mean, the moment I think you admit to yourself that you screwed up and it's no one's fault, because I was a little bit in denial for a long while. And I was like, but my runway was not long enough. If I only had more time, more money, if the market was different, if it wasn't so corrupted, whatever, like 1,000 reasons. But then I remember exactly where I was sitting and the day when it just dawned on me, no, it's me and it's okay because I'm human, so that was the realization that actually it's okay to fail. And back then, now everyone talks about fail fast and failure is great, but back then it was really a stigma. And also I think in Europe it's way more of a stigma when you fail than it is, and it has been in the US. So it's pretty tough, but you bounce back.
It's funny. I've heard that, right? So America loves an underdog, right? The underdog story here, the turnaround, the fail, and then becoming successful. That is part of the American ethos. And I've heard, and so being an American and living in America, that's like normal. Oh yeah, I fail, no big deal, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard though that in Europe that's not the case, and that it's like, oh, you get labeled a failure if you fail, right? That's
totally,
what you are, as opposed to something that happened that's a stepping stone to the next step. So so how did you get past that? What did you do?
So I, as I've mentioned, I think for me the first step was acknowledging that it was my responsibility, but this is not going to define me. So, I don't need to hold it for my whole life, but it felt, and it almost sounds like AA kind of steps. I felt before I can move on, maybe I need also to reach out to people who had a hard time with me during that time and just make amends as much as I can, to start from a clean slate. And that really did it for me. So that was one of the things that I would definitely recommend. When you mess up, just forgive yourself first, because if you can't do it, you cannot move on. I feel it always pulls you back. So I found a way to forgive myself. I reached out to people that maybe I wasn't very nice or very caring to during that time. And I said, hey, I'm really sorry. I messed up. You were trying to tell me something. I wasn't listening. I get it now. And let's move on. And the third thing was literally, that idea around the playbook. I bought a notebook. It was a moleskin black, with an elastic band notebook. Yeah. And I wrote on the first page the word playbook. And I didn't know what I was going to put into it, but just inspired by my father and his playbook, I thought, okay, I get it. He was right. I need to create my playbook, and then I need to get in sync with it. So I need to understand, why am I here? What am I trying to achieve? what way of showing up in my business and in my life would make me feel proud, etc., etc. And it was a long process, but I find that really helped me. So, you talk a lot about the importance of core values, and I could say that stuff like mission, vision, and values, it really helped me to get back on the right track and find meaning in life and be okay with what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
So you did that, but and I'm assuming that was that the catalyst for you to take the step into getting into consulting? Was getting clear on what you wanted to achieve?
Yeah. So so to survive, I took a job and I worked in sales for a while, and but it was always my dream to really understand what makes businesses successful. And it's a combination of, I feel that I've always had like entrepreneurial spirit, but I was also always into ads, so like education and stuff like that. So I thought, how could I combine that? And I discovered consulting and I discovered coaching. And there was this company back then called Hey Group. And one of the partners was Daniel Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence. Wow. And I thought, oh my God, if I only could get into that company, I would pay them to hire me because I would learn so much, this thing called leadership and emotional intelligence and how to build successful companies and blah, blah, blah. It was a boutique consultancy, but very specialized in HR issues, but also business strategy. And so I worked my way to that point where I got an interview. And actually, back then, I think things are way different today, but back then they would literally only hire people who graduated from Oxford or Cambridge, and I had none of that. I didn't have master's degree. So I felt like I had zero chances to get hired by this company. But I think I had so much passion for what they were doing and the contribution that I believed I could make that I just talked them into it. And so eventually they hired me, and that was the beginning of my career in consulting.
And how? So you said Hey Group? Is that's
yeah?
And so
Korn Ferry now, so they were bought out by
Korn Ferry. They got bought by Korn Ferry. Okay, so and you said, did you say you worked at Deloitte as well?
No, PwC.
Oh, PwC. Pardon me.
Yeah.
So you were working in these the Big Four, and Korn Ferry, although it's not a Big Four, it's similar type of these massive now they're global consulting companies. I interviewed with PwC, but I didn't get a job there. I interviewed at Deloitte too. I was not they would have hated me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, talking about cultural fit and stuff like that. I don't know if you would be happy there, not vice versa, but I don't think that you would be happy there. Yeah.
Do you want to hear my funny story of when I interviewed at PwC?
Definitely.
It's a really funny story.
Okay, go for it.
I was 22. And I went to school in California, and I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is they have a really great accounting program. So they hire a lot of people into the audit groups at the Big Four accounting firms. And so I interviewed. So this is in 2000, and I had earrings, right? But I had I'm always an early adopter. I had plugs. So I don't know, plugs.
Yeah, the big ones.
So so you could fit like a pencil in my earlobe. Right. they weren't too obvious, but they were big. And so I took them out because I got an interview at Deloitte, and I said, man, and then the guy said, you got to take those out. I'm like, really? You know how long it took to get them this big? And so I take them out, and I go and I interview at Deloitte, and they quickly don't ask me for a second interview. PwC, however, asked me for a second interview. So I do the one where you go and meet with the partner, and you have an interview with the partner, and then they take you to lunch, right? And it's the group. So it's like there's a bunch of people who have been interviewed that day, and they're trying to see how you socialize, and they're watching your behavior.
I did the same lunch. Oh my God, this is so funny. Go on.
This gets so bad. This is such a horror story. I've never told the story before. I tell it to people privately, but I've never told it on air. And so Hal, the partner's name was Hal, Hal, who I met with.
Right.
PwC, Orange County, California. So I meet with Hal, and we do our little talk, and it's cool. He's a partner, and I actually was I had like straight A's in accounting. I'm total numbers person. And so like, I probably would have done a good job because I'm a hard worker and know this stuff, but you're probably right. Culturally would not have been good. So we leave for lunch, and there's a girl that I go to high school with who's actually, she's an associate. And I see her there, and we're like sitting there talking, and I'm sitting at this table with a bunch of other people. The girl I went to high school with is sitting across from me, and there's a girl to my left. And I can't believe she did this. Like, she looks over at me and she goes, "Are your ears pierced?" She asked this in the middle. I swear to God, this girl, she was not an employee. She was a girl trying to get a job. She totally fucking assaulted me, right?
Yeah.
She was trying to make me look bad. And
under the belt, totally under the belt.
Oh, if only I just let it be. So this is what I said. I said, well,
Okay.
funny enough is they weren't before this interview. I was and I say this at lunch in the middle of like 20 fucking people. I'm like, no, in fact, when I was in my interview with Hal, he busted out a piercing gun, and he's the one that pierced my ears. Ironic, right? And it's a bad joke, right? The whole table's fucking silent like a library and looking at me like this guy just made a joke about a partner at lunch.
Mm-hmm. You don't do those things.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
they didn't invite me back.
I wonder why. I have no idea why. This is so strange. Maybe you've missed an email from them. That it still sits in your.
There must have been an offer letter somewhere.
Yeah.
that was my. Yeah. Isn't that funny?
It is a funny story, yeah. And it's also so funny that I had exactly the same experience in terms of having a lunch with a team, right? And it feels like you are the only stranger, and everyone, of course, knows each other, and they're like 8 people, and it's so intimidating, isn't it?
Well, don't make jokes about partners if you're out there trying to get a job at those places.
Not a good idea. Yeah.
You know what it was though? I'm a creative, irreverent entrepreneur. Like I would have fucking hated that job.
I think so. Yeah, you would have died. Yeah, totally. And especially in professional services firms, you are so constrained, and it's not just the culture, and I have some clients who are professional services firms, and they're like, we want innovation. We want our people to think outside of the box. And I'm like, okay, so tell me about your timesheets and your chargeability rates. What are your goals? And they will say, and for the people who listen to this and don't know what chargeability rate is, it's basically the percentage of your time that you absolutely have to spend on client-facing assignments, right? So basically that means that you are literally facing the client, either doing work at their offices or whatever. And they have like 80% chargeability rates for the people. So it means that 80% of your time you are working with a client. Right. And of course, the rest of the time you need to do some admin stuff, and then business development stuff, So, even, time-wise, you don't have the time to be innovative. You don't have the breathing space. So the systems, the way they are set up, they're just set up and optimized for efficiency, but not for innovation, not for entrepreneurship. And it's a big challenge for all these companies because they do want to be, and genuinely, I think, they do want to be innovative and offer amazing service to their clients, et cetera, et cetera. But as long as they're going to define success as 80% chargeability rates, it's probably not going to work.
Right. And at least of the other 20%, you want a Darius who's going to make fun of the partner, because that's the type of person that's going to not give a shit and is going to think of cool things. But they don't want that. They want like people to fall in line who are like homogenous. And I'm like, I honestly believe if you think of this, had I interviewed for an ad agency, they would have loved me. They would have thought I was the best. Right.
Yeah.
And those are creative agencies. All they do is create, ideate, and they're funny. And they sit, back in the 70s and 60s, they get high on marijuana and do work. Like that was like the norm in those environments. So you have two ends of the spectrum, right? And I look at that stuff too, and I always say like, well, what? Because I'm funny because I've not had a consulting business. I've always been the one running the business as the entrepreneur, and I look and I say, don't ask your team for their opinions unless you want to hear a lot of really, really loud vocal voices.
Totally. And this is actually wisdom that I've learned from my grandmother. This is exactly what she used to tell me. She said, don't ask a question if you are not willing to hear the answer. Right. And it's so true. And I think there is a lot of talk in large corporations about how we want our people to be brave and open and honest and challenge others, etc., etc. But when it comes to, and even companies that started with all good intentions, like I'm thinking, of Uber and toe stepping, right? They talked about, which was the whole idea was exactly that. When you think that your boss has a bad idea, tell him or her. And if you think that things can work better, then definitely raise your hand, do it. Don't worry, you can go, a level above and a level above and a level above. But with time, what happened was, as you say, this value was weaponized, and actually the hierarchies of the senior people were using it against people with great ideas or people who raise concerns, etc., etc. So yeah, it's not enough to talk about those things. You really have to walk the talk. That's the secret sauce. And sometimes I find that companies struggle with that. So they will have those wonderful values and they all sound so great. But when you really look at what's happening, you realize that none of the stuff that you can find on the website is actually being lived and being part of people's lived experience.
Well, and that's words on a wall or words on paper, right? And we've talked about that I talk about it in my book. We talked about it in your show. And so what's funny is I keep going back to your dad and his playbook, right? I mean, man, you're so lucky to have a father who is like, who actually promoted this. Like, I got into this stuff because I watched my father not live his life that way, and you got into it because your father was embracing this to build a championship local basketball team, which is so interesting that would. I mean, by the way, I was a hardcore athlete. So for me, and I was team captain, I was a wrestler, and I did this in college and high school. And so for me, I always was like, follow the leader. The leader's the one, being a leader was like really big deal for me. I didn't understand the concept of values. It was around showing your values, right?
Yeah.
And then being unapologetic around people that didn't want to live them, they could leave, right? So we'd kick people. I was not the coach. I would go to the coach and say, we need to kick that person off the team. They don't want to do it our way. Which is really that's essentially what you do in a really good hiring process if you have values that are alive and well. And so hearing what you're saying and thinking back to your father and him being so clear on you need to want to giving you that advice for your first business that you need to be clear on who you are, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
Instead of what you're creating, who you are is what matters. And that's such great advice.
It is. And I think it's a pity. I agree with you that I was super lucky to have my dad in my life, but also unlucky, I think, because he was my dad.
Right.
And so I wasn't prepared to listen, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I think if a stranger told me those things, they would have had a bigger impact back then. But I completely ignored him for a long time. But you're totally right. And I think that being clear about who you are is so critical, and also being clear about who you want to become, and I know that you've lived that experience through your businesses, right? You start at a point where you are person A, but after a year or 2 years, as your business grows, as things happen, you either grow with a business or things are not working. So I think another aspect that is helpful is to think, who will I need to become in order to create what I want to create, right? Not only who I am today and not only what I stand for, like my core values, because these don't change, but which parts of me need to evolve and need to grow so that I can create, that vision or achieve those goals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, there's a woman that was on the show who's a friend of mine. Her name is Gina Molokon Long, and she and I had this massive what do you call it? Midlife crisis? You know,
Did you?
I got thrown off of a cliff. That's why I decided to leave my business as CEO. I stepped down voluntarily and, got exited that company. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't feel like I was aligned with where I wanted to be. It's a great company. I mean, our company is an amazing company that we built, but it just wasn't, there was that misalignment, and so what was funny was when I was CEO of the company, I saw Gina speak at MIT, and she said something that was really interesting, and I would love to get your take on this. She said, in life, there's different vibrations, right? And if you want to be let's say I want my contemporaries to be people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but let's just say I did. What level do I need to be vibrating on in which they're going to find it interesting to be in my world with me? And so by the way, so there's this whole thing. Are you familiar with cymatics of water? Have you seen this?
No, but I am familiar with vibrating at a wavelength and at a level that we are heading towards. So it totally makes sense to me. I think it might not make sense to the people who listen to us. Right. So maybe we need to give people some context. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So think of it like, so if you're listening to this, think of it like the radio. Right, if you tune the for those of you guys that know what a radio is, you tune the radio, and because you got to find that wavelength, and once you're on that wavelength, you get music out of it. And her point was, if you think of these leaders or these people that you wish you could aspire to be in their world, what wavelength are they resonating on? What wavelength are they in tune to? And what would you need to do to be? What type of person would you need to be where you would be elevating or where you would be resonating on that wavelength? And so I have a funny experience. This is a funny story. So I met Elon Musk, right? Like met him like in a small group of people.
Wow.
Right. And it was me, him, his brother, the two people who created the show Westworld, and their agent, who was my good friend. And it was after he did this talk at South by Southwest here in Austin. And it was like 6 of us backstage, and I didn't have anything to say to him. I didn't have one word to say to him. It was weird. I shook his hand, and I stood next to him. I looked up at him. He's really tall, and I was like, "Because what do you say? Like, what's your name? You're not going to say that, right? Because you know his name. Yeah. You're not going to say, what do you do? So what do you say if you don't? I didn't know what to say. I did say, I said, hey, where are you guys staying? But the point was, like, I wasn't resonating on his level. Like, I didn't have, like, and obviously it was a brief interaction, but you think of the people you meet where instantly you hit it off with them. And like, he's an introvert, so I'll give myself a hall pass. But what level would you need to be resonating on where if you met your heroes, where you would be on their level? Where you would be able to say something, where you would have to be able to have a meaningful conversation that wasn't about how great you thought they were. And that's when I think about where are you resonating? To your point, are you the leader you need to be if that's how you envision who you're going to be? Do you agree with that?
I 100%, 1000%. I think it's so true. And, it's true for people, definitely. And I heard someone also say, if Oprah Winfrey invited you to her show, would you be ready tomorrow, right? Provided that you would like to be on her show, of course. Maybe not everyone would like. But if you would, are you ready? Are you ready for this opportunity? I think it's a good question. And also, I've had conversations with founders and leaders when they had their first idea for their business. And sometimes it feels so big and so ambitious and so overwhelming. And sometimes they really try to solve problems and challenges that are huge, like, ocean plastic. And I spoke to a guy, Dave Katz, who created that Plastic Bank, which is an amazing company. He's
in Canada, right?
He's in Canada, right? Yeah. And I was a mentor on the program that he participated on, and we had this conversation just sitting and drinking coffee, I think, during breakfast. And he told me, when it first occurred to me, this idea, I was like, who am I to even, feel like it could be me to be addressing this problem? Like, I can't. And then he said, thankfully, I don't know, something hit me, and I thought, no. It's not about who am I today, because today maybe I can't solve this problem, but who would I need to become in order to be able to pull it off. And he said the moment he realized that the question is not who am I, but who do I need to become to pull it off, everything shifted for him.
Wow.
And I found this so powerful.
Do you sorry to interrupt, but do you think that like when people get really clear on that, like to your dad's point, when they get clear on their playbook, that is where you're defining, like some of that shouldn't be as so aspirational that it's not achievable. Like I think that you got to be, I guess, honest and authentic with what you are, but to your point, not say, oh, I have all these constraints around me. Like put the constraints aside and say, who am I and what do I want to become that's reasonable and also aspirational, and then build the purpose and the values and the vision around that. Is that kind of the way you're talking about it or thinking of it?
Totally. And I think, that piece around who we are today is also really important. And so we definitely need to honor it. And I think it's especially important to know who am I and what do I stand for in terms of values, et cetera, when I'm at my best, right?
Right.
Because we all have bad days and we've all made terrible mistakes. And this is also a part of us. So, and sure, we need to embrace this. But I think that when you think about your core values, when you think about your mission and your vision, it is useful to ask yourself, even as a company, not just as a human being, like, who am I when I'm at my best? Like, what is the stuff that I'm so great at that it's so natural that I don't even think that it's a strength, or it's so important that it's absolutely non-negotiable for me? And I think that helps to ask yourself this question: when I'm at my best, or when I feel in alignment. You talked about alignment and being misaligned. That's also a question that can help you clarify whether something is important for you or not. Would you agree with that, Darius?
Yeah, I think that, well, I was taught this process called the walk the talk practice, which is getting really clear on your values, and then on a weekly basis or monthly basis, however often you want to do it. Weekly is a good practice, as you look at your values and you look at your calendar and you see if they're aligned or not. And then you say, am I doing what I say I'm meant to be doing? Because your calendar will show you what's important for you.
Yeah, I love it. And your budget, right? Where you spend your money,
Right.
like totally. Yeah, I love that. And I think this is one of those things that, I don't know what your experience is with businesses that you work with right now, but what I see happen is people go through this work to identify what are our values, how do we want to operate, but then they stop. So they don't do this work, like look at your calendar, look what you're doing, look on daily basis. And I think that's a pity, because if you don't do this daily, it's not a practice anymore. Like it's an event, and it's not going to change anything. As you know, I've mentioned my dad's first principle was practice for the game. And I think practice is super important. There's this sculptor, she's called Elizabeth King, and she said that basically process saves us from the poverty of our intentions.
Wow.
And I just love this quote. Isn't it amazing?
My brain just exploded.
So I think the same with the calendar.
Process saves us from the poverty of our intentions. I'm going to get that tattooed on my arm.
It's one of those things, right? That you feel like, it would make a good tattoo. Honestly, I love it so much. It's exactly what you were talking about with the calendar. You need a process. You need something that is going to help you, because none of us is as conscious and as intentional as we would like to be. So to keep ourselves on track, we need a little bit of support.
Well, to your point, your habits become your reality, right? And so I do want to address that. So you're starting this thing called the Culture Strategy Boot Camp, and sounds like this is probably a nice dovetail into that. Can you talk about that? Because and really give our audience a background on what does your current organization do from a consulting standpoint, and how does this product like different, or how does it play into like promoting your consulting business as a whole?
Yeah. So what we do is we help purpose-driven businesses to unlock the power of the culture and create thriving cultures, so that they can accelerate growth and make the impact that they want to make in the world. So amplify their impact. And we believe that by doing that, we really create a better world. So we're huge believers that businesses can and should be a force for good, and
Right.
it's the responsibility of the business to make this place a better world. We need it more than ever. And so what we do is we consult with companies, helping them like set up their culture playbook, articulate those things, and then operationalize them so that they can create an environment and create a team that is well equipped to take the business to the next level. And as a result, bring their vision to life or work towards their vision. And, Darius, what I've noticed is that a lot of the work that we do lacks the impact that we could make if only we were able to help founders, leaders create a culture shaping and strategy building habit. And so right now we are working on a really exciting experience. It's going to be 100% virtual, 100% online for founders and leaders to help them build those muscles. So basically for 100 days, in as little as 15 minutes, you get to work on your culture. So there's field work, there are some parts that are live, but there's also a lot of an important aspect of that is that you learn in community. Mm-hmm. So we really pick founders and leaders very carefully so that you find your tribe, basically, and you find people that can hold you accountable, that can help you test out some ideas, that you can share your struggles with. Because I think one of the things, and actually I would be curious to ask you, has it ever been an issue for you, like not having people that you can talk to about the struggles that you had as a leader in your company? Did it feel lonely, or like I know that you've been lucky enough to have a lot of mentoring, a lot of support, and be part of those communities. So perhaps not. But
no. That didn't happen by itself. It happened because I was at a point where I was I was 26 years old and had 100 employees and had a company blowing up. And this is back in 2005. And in 2005, if you were a 25-year-old founder, 26-year-old founder, there was none of what you have today. There was no there was no incubators, there was no Y Combinator, there was YEO, and there was some of the a lot of these a lot of it was for older people, right? There wasn't a bunch of being an entrepreneur was not cool in 2005.
No, it wasn't. People don't realize it, but no, totally.
I was the only entrepreneur I knew, and I lived in San Francisco.
Wow.
If you want to blow your mind, I was in San Francisco. I was the only entrepreneur I knew. Now it's the opposite. Everyone's an entrepreneur. Back then, none of my friends were, and I was I was around a bunch of movers and shakers. Everyone had jobs. So yeah, that's no. I found it through forums and entrepreneur organizations. And I did EO, and I did Birthing of Giants at MIT, and I did all these things. And now it's like crazy. Now I'm in too many of them.
Yeah, this can happen too. That's an issue. And actually, it's interesting because feedback that I got consistently about the bootcamp is I cannot commit to 100 days. And then my question was like, okay, so how about 15 minutes? Maybe that sounds better. And it's but yeah, people are totally overwhelmed. I get that. There's a lot happening. And I think you are not alone. A lot of people just, belong to so many groups and to so many communities. And a lot of these communities don't really generate as much value as they would like to see. Right. So you're kind of I don't know, I can't be a part of another one. It's just going to be the same old.
I will tell you this though, it sounds like what you're creating is amazing, especially most companies. Listen, I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Here's a really easy way to see how good your culture is. Do your ENPS in your company. Go ask your employees if they would recommend a friend or family member to work at your company on a scale of 1 to 10. And if your score is not an average of 60 or 70%, you have work to do. The second one is go do your Q12. Ask Gallup's 12 questions in their Q12. And if your average score is not 4.2 or above for all your employees, you have work to do. That's it. So then the second thing I would say, to your point, is I would look hard and be honest with yourself. Do you have that support? If you have an issue in your business, is there a group of at least 5 to 10 people you can reach out to and get 5 to 10 pieces of feedback on the phone or over email within 1 hour? And if the answer is no, then you need help. Yeah. Because it's out there. Trust me, I have it. I have 25 people. I can lean on. I probably have 100 people at this point. Where it's to the point where it's ridiculous how much support I have. I feel like a very lucky human being. So
you can't play solo, right? And I think yeah, you don't realize at the beginning how much help and support you are actually going to need. And then, of course, as you go, you realize, oh, I need a mentor for this. I need a mentor for this other thing.
Yep.
And it's absolutely necessary. You just can't go it alone. And it's interesting because my dad, one of the things that he had in his principles, so the second one was play for the team. And what he actually meant by that was that it shouldn't be about you, right? So don't be driven by your ego. Sometimes what's good for the team is not good for you. But also what he meant is that, of course, it works both ways. And so the team is going to be there for you as well. And the team is going to play for you as well. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to create our teams, not just on the inside, so not within the company, but also have a team outside of the company and have people in our lives that are committed to our success. At least as much as we are.
Yeah.
And I have this group of women that I meet for 3 years now, every week, every Monday. Now we're doing Thursdays. And honestly, I don't know what I would have done without them. And sometimes they are the ones who push me, to be more courageous and do the challenging thing. And I'm like, no, I don't know, I really don't know. And they're like, no, you can do it. And they're there for you. So yeah, I just can't recommend enough having a community, having those people in your life that you can be absolutely honest with, feel safe, and get their support and get their advice.
Yeah, we have a question that came from the audience. I'm gonna say this before I ask the question, which is, it's this. You just reminded me of this. It's like a African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yes. And so, the question for you though is, how important is the role of a coaching in culture transformation?
Oh my God, where do I start? And the thing is, I've co-authored a book on this, but to make it really simple and quick, I personally am not a huge fan of hierarchy generally in companies. So I think that we don't need managers, people, provided that we hire adults, right? And I think it's illegal to hire kids anyway. So provided that we hire adults.
It's no big deal. Just start young. I started at 10.
It's true. I started at 12. So yeah, but if you hire adults, they will be able to do the job. You just need to give them some support, give them the right tools, see what they need to be able to perform, right? So I am a big believer that instead of managers, we need more coaches. Yeah. And when you think about culture transformation, I think this is absolutely necessary. So you talk, and I know that you talk about the importance of conversations in changing and doing anything. So you explain this process, right? And I've seen this on one of your shows, how you explained the origin story of the whole insight that you had, that actually conversations drive results, because this is how we take decisions. This is how we shape and develop beliefs and assumptions and challenge our assumptions, etc., etc. And this is what leads to action. I completely agree. Sometimes these conversations are internal. So, we have this narrative with ourselves. And sometimes when we're lucky, we have people who can have this conversation with us. And so coaching, of course, plays this role. And I think that if you want to be able to shape a culture that allows your people to do their best work, you absolutely have to develop a coaching skill and give people the space to think for themselves and to find solutions themselves, because this is how we grow, right? So people really need that space from the people around them at work, rather than just being told what they need to do. So I don't know, Mimi, if I have answered your question, and if this is what you expected to hear, because there are, of course, so many aspects then of that. But I think it plays absolutely pivotal role in any sort of change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny. So I have been a member of Entrepreneurs Organization for 14 years, and actually 12 years, and then I've been out for 2 years. But in that, they have confidentiality forums with other CEOs. And one of the things you just reminded me of is when we join these groups, we are taught this method called Gestalt, which is we are not allowed to give advice. We are allowed to tell experience sharing When let's say someone shows up with a problem, I don't say, oh, you should do this, this, and this. The reason we were taught that is because if they do it and it doesn't work, they'll say, oh, Darius was wrong. And really the better way of doing it is for me to say, well, one time I had the same scenario happen to me and I did this, this, and this to get it to fix it. They can then internalize it, autonomously figure out what they want to do, and make their own decisions, and then they own it. And so, and this is how we're taught to coach. And so I ended up bringing that system into my company. I had 15 leadership forums where we taught Gestalt, and people brought their problems, and there was no, you're not allowed to give advice. So I do agree. I think the job of the coach is not to tell you what to do; it's to get you to be your best on your own, right? And
totally,
show observation. So such amazing advice. I know we're running late for you, and you're in Europe, so I don't want to keep you too long. But any parting thoughts or anything you want to talk about regarding promotion of the Culture Boot Camp? When does that start? Culture Strategy Boot Camp. When does it start? How can people get involved with it, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on my website, probably agabajer.com. That's AGABAJER.com. And we can post also some links to where you can find the bootcamp, but you will find the bootcamp there as well. And we're launching end of February, beginning of March, the beta version of the bootcamp. We're already accepting applications for that, so it's super exciting. And one thing that I want to say about the bootcamp in terms of how it's different really from anything that probably you have heard out there around culture is this. We use the 1% rule. And I know that you are a numbers person and you must know what 1% rule is, right? So, and 1% rule for those who are listening is that if you become better at something just by 1%, but every single day, this compounds to something incredible. So just to give you an example with your show, right? Like I know that you have this purpose to help people learn and fulfill their potential. And so one way of accomplishing that is by growing your audience. And so if you were starting with 100 people, which would probably be just like your closest family and friends, and then if you did the show every single day, like not like now, once a week, but every single day. And if you grew your audience just by 1% every single day, Darius, you are the numbers person, I'm relying on you. How many people would listen to a single show by the end of the year?
Oh my God. So I was trying to do that. I have to run the math because it's exponential. I think is it 1,000% increase, or is it more than that? My guess is it's way more than that. If it's 1%.
So it's 37 times the initial number, right?
Wow.
Or the initial level of your skill. So you would have basically almost 4,000 people listening to every single show if you just increase it, improve it by 1% daily. And the same thing happens when it comes to our ability to shape culture. The same thing happens when it comes to our ability to build a strategy that works. And so we are integrating this principle of conscious and deliberate practice into the bootcamp so that you have an opportunity to do something, just a tiny thing, but every day for 100 days so that you can take it forward and really see tangible results. So our aim is to give people something super tangible to have at the end of this. And we're absolutely confident that people will be going away with a lot of stuff that has changed in their companies and definitely setting the right foundations for their companies to grow exponentially.
Well, and I love that. And on that note, guys, listen, this is why I always tell people, you'll never have enough time to do this. You have to make the time to do these things. This is just like working out. This is just like taking care of yourself, and this is part of taking care of yourself. So what people end up doing is they get stuck in the business as usual. Oh, I don't have time for I'm like, yeah, you don't have fucking time to spend 15 minutes in a boot camp to make your company better every day. It's not that I don't believe it. You're lying to yourself. That's a lie. Just say, hey, I'm lying to myself. It's all good. I accept that I'm lying to myself, and I'm accepting the lie to be truth. Because everyone has 15 minutes, and if you don't have it, you need to make it. And I'm sorry, but if I can't give you 15 minutes a day, that increases let's just say it's not even 1%. Let's say it's half of what you're saying. Well, you can improve your business by half of 37x. 18.5x. And the funny thing is, the people that won't do it are the ones that are going to be stuck, and they're going to grow 0% the next year. So I so appreciate what you're doing, and I love that you and I see so eye to eye on this stuff. This is just and we're on 2 different continents. So this is
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. So
and Darius, I just want to say your book is on our reading list. Like, definitely just want to thank you again for writing the book and doing the work that you are doing, because it is honestly the most practical, useful thing that I have seen for a really, really long time when it comes to first of all, uncovering your values, right? Because it's how do you discover them? So you take people by the hand and you show them how do you discover how to design them so that they are user-friendly, so that people can remember them, and so that it translates into daily behaviors. I call, when values are translated into action, I call it virtues. So for me, it's like values in action are virtues. And I think everything that people need to get to that point where, people do the right thing, even when you are not watching, they can find in your book. So I definitely recommend people just go on Amazon or wherever you buy your books and get the core values equation.
Yeah. Hey, you didn't hear it from me. Hey, guys, listen to every single thing Aga said, especially the last 5 minutes of it. Guys, Aga, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so fun.
Thank you. Thank you. I had fun too.
Oh man, what an amazing show, guys! What an amazing show. I mean, it's Christmas, it's the holiday season. All of y'all,
can you please put your hat on for saying goodbyes?
I was going to end on the hat. Guys, thank you so much. Aga, I'm so pleased to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This was really fun. You guys, everyone, subscribe to the show, review the book, buy the book, check out the boot camp. We put a bunch of links in the comment section. So sign up for the Culture Strategy Bootcamp with Aga and her team. If you guys want to learn more, go to agabajer.com. We got that in the comment section as well. And everyone, have a great holiday season with their family. And let me see if I...
Have great holidays and Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.